Signal 2-3, 29 September 2020. From Tara Ross, whom I appreciate giving us different stories from Medal of Honor and historical accounts. I really appreciate this, Tara Ross. So the first one is the Medal of Honor from July. This is from 24 July 2020. During this week in 1966, 2 Marines were involved in an action that would ultimately earn them medals of honor. The men were then serving together in Operation Hastings, an effort to stop the North Vietnamese from penetrating further south. Robert Modrzewski was commanding officer of his company. It was the same company in which John McGinty was serving. The operation started out as a helicopter assault, Modrzewski later recalled. The helicopters unfortunately came under attack by small arms fire, and the landing zone wasn't big enough. 2 helicopters crashed. It wasn't a very auspicious beginning, Modrzewski concluded. The Marines were in for several tough days. They successfully captured an enemy position, but they were outnumbered, under attack, and surrounded. Ammunition was dwindling and reinforcements were nowhere in sight. There was no way to evacuate the dead and the wounded. On their last night in the area, the Marines were attacked by a large enemy force. Modrzewski directed air and artillery fire to strike close to his position. At one point, he managed to crawl 200 meters to provide critically needed ammunition to an exposed element of his command. He was already wounded by then and exposing himself to enemy fire, but he went anyway. Amazingly, the Americans survived the night, but they were soon ordered to move. Modrzewski's company was to serve as rear guard for the battalion. "I don't have enough Marines here to protect the Little Sisters of the Poor," Modrzewski later recalled, "let alone protect the rear of the battalion, but nevertheless, that was my mission." If anything, McGinty was in an even worse position. Company K was covering the rear, Modrzewski would tell a New York Times reporter in 2014, and Sergeant McGinty's platoon was providing cover for the rear of the rear. Both men got in trouble on their way out. Modrzewski again found himself calling in artillery strikes close to his position, but McGinty ran into a different kind of a challenge. His platoon was supposed to cover the Marine engineers as they finished destroying the helicopters that had crashed a few days earlier. Sensitive information on board could not fall into enemy hands. Fortunately, McGinty had made a decision that would save lives. Company K had been resupplied with ammunition the day before. The other 2 platoons had taken off in front of me, he later recounted, and they left a lot of ammunition there. I made my platoon pick up all the ammo because I wasn't leaving it for the North Vietnamese. His platoon wasn't too happy about it at the time, but that ammunition would wind up saving their lives. The platoon was attacked on its way out. They were forced to fight a multi-hour battle. McGinty was seemingly everywhere. He fired at enemy combatants, killing them at point-blank range. He risked his life to run toward men who had been separated from the rest of the platoon. He quickly reloaded weapons for wounded men who could still fire at the enemy. He ordered air and artillery strikes close to his position. His left eye was badly wounded, but he fought anyway. Wouldn't you know that those outnumbered Americans finally drove off the Vietnamese? Both Modrzewski and McGinty were awarded the Medal of Honor in the same March 1968 ceremony. Modrzewski later expressed the sentiments of both men. "I never looked at it as something that belonged to me, personally. It was always for the wounded and those that died and the sacrifices that they made." Our other Medal of Honor winner today, Kaoru Moto of Hawaii was a private first class in the U.S. Army and a recipient of the Medal of Honor for his actions during World War II in 1944. Moto was born to Japanese immigrant parents and was a Nisei, which means he was a second-generation Japanese American. He joined the Army in March of 1941, 10 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1943, and volunteered to be a part of the All-Nisei 100th Infantry Battalion that was mostly made up of Japanese Americans from Hawaii and the mainland. On July 7th, 1944, Moto single-handedly silenced 2 enemy machine guns while acting as a scout and then destroyed a third despite being severely wounded. For his actions on this day, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which was upgraded to a Medal of Honor in 2000. Moto left the Army while still a private first class. He died at the age of 75 and was buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. His Medal of Honor citation reads, Private First Class, Kaoru Moto distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism in action on 7 July 1944 near Castellina, Italy. While serving as First Scout, Private First Class Moto observed a machine gun nest that was hindering his platoon's progress. On his own initiative, he made his way to a point 10 paces from the hostile position and killed the enemy machine gunner. Immediately, the enemy assistant gunner opened fire in the direction of Private First Class Moto. Crawling to the rear of the position, Private First Class Moto surprised the enemy soldier, who quickly surrendered. Taking his prisoner with him, Private First Class Moto took a position a few yards from a house to prevent the enemy from using the building as an observation point. While guarding the house and his prisoner, he observed an enemy machine gun team moving into position. He engaged them and with deadly fire forced the enemy to withdraw. An enemy sniper located in another house fired at Private First Class Moto, severely wounding him. Applying first aid to his wound, he changed position to elude the sniper fire and to advance. Finally, relieved of his position, he made his way to the rear for treatment. Crossing the road, he spotted an enemy machine gun nest. Opening fire, he wounded 2 of the 3 soldiers occupying the position. Not satisfied with this accomplishment, he then crawled forward to a better position and ordered the enemy soldier to surrender. Private First Class Moto's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit on him, his unit, and the United States Army. We are eternally thankful for Private First Class Moto's service to our country. Rest in peace, sir. And finally, we have not a Medal of Honor winner, but a distinguished hero nevertheless. Ben Kuroki. His quote, "I had to fight like hell for the right to fight for my own country." Kuroki, a Nebraska farm boy, somehow slipped through the filter that placed all Japanese American enlistees in segregated units during World War II, and he became a gunner in a B-24 squadron based in Europe. He served with distinction and completed 30 combat missions, more than the standard full tour of 25. He returned to the United States for rest and recuperation. Kuroki returned to the fight by serving another full tour as a B-29 gunner in the Pacific. He was the only Japanese American to serve in air combat in the Pacific and one of the very few soldiers at all to have fought in both the European and the Pacific theaters. He completed a total of 58 combat missions and was awarded 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses and the Air Medal with 5 oak leaf clusters. That is an accomplishment, and good for you, sir. Finally, some words of wisdom from Benjamin Franklin and from Ronald Reagan. From Benjamin Franklin first. Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. And from former President Reagan, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. Signal 2-3 out.